Hello everyone, welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd, and we got a lot of news I want to get to today. I was doing a test live stream a few days ago. I briefly covered about Doug Ford. I want to get more into that. We're going to be talking more about, Trudeau and Wynne, but not so much about them specifically. I'll go into more detail in just a minute. And then Patrick Brown has made a return. However, there's a lot of detail going into what's surrounding him right now, so I'm going to make an independent video to cover all of that, just because I'd probably spend too much time on it right now. I want to do it on an independent video. But let's start off the day talking about the big man. Doug Ford jumping into the election. He was actually the first one to put in his name into the PC leadership after Patrick Brown went down. And already he's been making waves. Right off the bat, his Ford Nation base support came back. And it seems pretty strong, because in his very first rally, he had 1,500 people show up, and that was during a stormy night in Toronto, I believe it was. But he is running more on a populist platform in comparison to other candidates at the moment. We'll go into the rest of them in just a minute. His platform seems to be more based around us, the people. You know, he wants to cut taxes. He's not going to implement a carbon tax, which is sitting pretty popular with with everybody that's supporting him right now. His whole point, it seems, is to undo a lot of what Wynne has done. In a lot of ways, he's coming in a very Trump-like fashion. He's coming in on a populist agenda. He's running right after an unpopular leader is coming out. Because, at least in terms of the right wing, Obama was not popular at all. And Wynne is not popular among the right either. I don't think I have to tell any of my viewers you don't watch me because you like her. So our very first video is of Ford announcing his entry into the leadership race, and he did this from his mother's basement, as we can see from here.
I'm announcing I'll be running for the leader of the Ontario PC Party and to be the next premier of this great province.
So then came his first rally, and holy shit did he come into a massive support. Ford Nation is strong right now in Ontario. And this is the rally he had on the stormy night right now. These are all the people that fought their way just to come see him. When was the last time we really had a candidate that was that popular that many people were willing to fight their way through a blizzard such as that? But there's a reason for it. Clearly people are coming out to support Doug Ford for good reasons. It's the same reason that I'm actually throwing my support behind Doug Ford for the PC nomination. It's just that out of everybody that has gone in so far, he's the one that's going to get shit done. He's the one that's going to reverse Kathleen Wynne policies and bring jobs back to Ontario.
Put down your sign! Put down your sign!
So we skip ahead now to the promises that he makes.
I am not going to introduce a carbon tax. Folks, that is a bad tax. And if the Prime Minister wants to try to make us, well, I'll tell the Prime Minister, well, just the same way his father said it, just watch me.
saying he wasn't going to introduce the carbon tax. That's going over very popular with the right and the PC-based support, of course, both in the mainstream establishment and both the more forward nation grassroots movements. Everybody on the right is more in favor of this no carbon tax. However, the left lost its mind when he said this, and they lost their mind again because none of the other ones running for the progressive conservative leadership have said they're going to support a carbon tax. However, the reason they're not going to support a carbon tax is, well, quite simply because Wynne has taxed the shit out of us already. And that was one thing that was actually unpopular about Patrick Brown that he wanted to do. He actually wanted to keep the carbon tax in place. So for a lot of people, it was kind of like holding up, it was kind of like plugging their nose as they voted for Patrick Brown this coming election. He had the people who liked him, but there were a lot of people that didn't like him for many different reasons, whether it had to do with the carbon tax. Many saw him as a red Tory, for instance. So this is going to be the man that we need in this time. Or I'm sorry, the person.
So we'd like you to look
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind.
So under no circumstances is there going to be a carbon tax implemented in Ontario, which is a good thing right now because we really can't afford it. That's getting into our next story in just a minute. But then on top of this, along with Ford, we also have Christine Elliott, who's jumped into the race. And she's a veteran MPP. She has served for a long time, and she actually has ran, this is going to be her third time running for the leadership. She ran in 2009, but she lost out to Tim Hudak, and Tim Hudak ended up losing the 2014 election to Kathleen Wynne, where Kathleen Wynne got her majority government. And then, and that's where she ran against Patrick Brown as well, lost to Patrick Brown. So this is going to be the third time going into it. And she's actually in for a hard time because not only does she have Ford going up against her, who he's not a mainstream politician, and he's not like the Ford name has a lot of history. It just caused a lot of controversy, a lot of headlines over the last few years. But he also has Caroline Mulrooney, the daughter of Brian Mulrooney, who she goes up against. So we got at least two people whose names in politics are known in both in Ford's case, definitely known mostly in Ontario, probably different provinces too. But Mulrooney, everybody knows the name Mulrooney, Brian Mulrooney. Her father was Prime Minister back in the 80s, I believe it was. So she has that advantage there that people, as soon as they hear Mulrooney, oh, I know that, I recognize that name. So for that name's sake, she's actually probably going to do well in these polls. So Christine Elliott has a hard time to go up against, and I feel like these two losses in the past are going to weigh on her, especially because in the past she lost out, as I stated, she lost out to Tim Hudak, who ended up losing to Kathleen Wynne. So people are probably going to throw that back in her face. I don't believe that she would be the strongest leader, although she may be a good economic leader because she is the wife of the late Jim Flaherty, who is one of the best finance ministers that Canada ever had. He saved our ass back in 2008 when the financial crash happened. He reacted quickly, and he managed to actually, Canada weathered the blow pretty well in comparison to America because of Jim Flaherty. So economically, she may be a good fit for Ontario. However, she's, again, not very well known. A lot of Canadians don't know much about federal politics. Let's not even get into provincial politics. So I don't believe Christine Elliott's going to win this one. And then, as we start talking about, we have Caroline Mulrooney. And Mulrooney has pretty much no experience. She comes from a political dynasty. So that's really one of the problems that Christine Elliott has going up against her. Maybe I already said that. But she has no experience. Caroline Mulrooney does not have any experience in politics, really. She's kind of been around the provincial politics scene in the past, but really she hasn't done anything. So she's going in based on essentially the fact that she has a history, her family history in politics. In a lot of senses, she is really riding out on the fact that, well, she's really riding on the fact that her name is Mulrooney. But then at the same time, the problem that Mulrooney and Elliott have is Caroline Mulrooney many times has been accused of being a red Tory. So anybody who doesn't understand what I mean when I say red Tory, although I assume you do, is just a conservative that seems to lean more liberal. A lot of people call them fake conservatives. So just for some of the things in the past that the way she's talked, a lot of people have accused her of being a red Tory. Christine Elliott, while they may not be able to make that same accusation, she did, after losing out to Patrick Brown, she did go on to do some work under the Kathleen Wynne government. So then people are going to say, well, you want us to put you in charge of our party, but then at the same time, you've worked for your very opponent who you are going up to criticize. And in fact, Mulrooney too has this problem because her father, Brian Mulrooney, has not only been a big supporter of Justin Trudeau, he's actually done work for Justin Trudeau. They have a long history of the Mulrooneys and the Trudeau family. While Brian Mulrooney, his history can go back to Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, where he found himself on the opposite end of the aisle. Mulrooney was a conservative, and Trudeau was an Elliott. Trudeau was a liberal. But the thing is Brian Mulrooney has known Justin Trudeau his whole life, so he put his support wholeheartedly behind him. So this is going to weigh on Caroline Mulrooney, the fact that her father does so much work for Justin Trudeau. In fact, Brian Mulrooney is sort of his, I think they've called him his Trump whisperer. He's kind of the guy who advises Trudeau on how to handle Trump. So we have these three so far. Two of them have done work either for the federal, have connections with either federal liberals or the provincial liberals who they're going up against, which that's not really going to bode well for him. Mulrooney has the name, which will probably attract both the political establishment as well as people that aren't really politically involved. They'll hear the name Mulrooney and be like, oh, okay. But Ford, on the other hand, he does not have any of these connections. He doesn't have the connection to Trudeau. He doesn't have the connection to Kathleen Wynne or the Liberals. So when he's talking about going up against Kathleen Wynne, he's serious about it. So that's one advantage that he definitely has over them. Although one thing that you could say is a disadvantage for him is the fact that he's a man. And with everything that's going on in all the revelations that are coming out in politics these days, not only in the Conservative Party, the Ontario Conservative Party, but now it's coming out in federal cabinets too. It's been a bad fucking week for the NDP, as a few of their members have been accused of sexual misconduct as well. So this is going to be going up against him, because a lot of people are going to feel, especially with Patrick Brown being forced to step down, and with the president of the Progressive Conservatives forced to step down over similar allegations, a lot of people feel that a female leader is necessary now. I understand where this sentiment can come from, but what I think is dangerous about it is you're starting to play the identity politics game, but you're playing it in the Conservative Party a lot more now. It's just now, it's not, well, I'm not saying that neither Caroline Mulrooney or Christine Elliott would be necessarily bad leaders for the party. We're not necessarily going on merit at that point. Even if you say Doug Ford's not the one, even if you say Doug Ford doesn't have the same experience, he doesn't deserve to be the leader in comparison to these other two, it's still not based on the merit system completely. It's a dangerous game to even start playing with. That's why I don't like seeing the Conservatives playing this game. But the other reason I support Ford is if you look at who is the type of people that are supporting, if you look at the type of people that are supporting each candidate. So when we're talking about Mulrooney, she has a lot of support from the establishment politics. For instance, Lisa Raitt has put her support behind her. I couldn't remember at the time of my live stream when I was kind of talking about this, but it is Caroline Mulrooney that Lisa Raitt has put her support behind, and several other big politicians are putting their support behind Mulrooney. So in the federal sense, a lot of the Conservatives establishment want Mulrooney put in place. In this graphic I have up here, it says their base support, and for Christine Elliott, they had the Ontario PC establishment, and then they had Patrick Brown's staff for Caroline Mulrooney. However, I think it would be fair to put on top the federal establishment is also supporting Mulrooney compared to the PC establishment. And a lot of people feel that the PC establishment is kind of corrupt these days, especially with the ousting of Patrick Brown. Some were calling it a coup, that people just jumped on these allegations in order to ouster him. And I don't know much about that. These are just a few things I'm hearing. And even though Christine Elliott has talked about she's going to deal with grassroots movements, Doug Ford's is based around the grassroots movement, grassroots conservatives. So if you want to know who, that's one of the reasons I'm supporting Doug Ford over any of these other candidates so far. It's just the fact that, do we really want establishment politics anymore? Aren't we a little tired of this bland, getting nowhere, like back and forth bickering? If you just have to go watch Question Period. Now, I like Andrew Scheer for how much he rails against Trudeau, how much he hammers into Trudeau. But all in all, Andrew Scheer is not much different than any other politician out there. None of them really are. Doug Ford is different. There's a lot of, you can definitely say there's a lot of Trumpism to him. And even some of the ways that he's answered questions, there's a lot of Trumpism to him. For instance, he's talked about how he's a businessman, he's going to get things done. These are very similar. He offers a vague platform, but many of us people who are supporting him because that vague platform is still what we're looking for. Tax cuts, get jobs back into Ontario. Because just today it was announced that I think it was 100,000 jobs were suddenly cut from Canada, and 88,000 of them came from Ontario. Let's see. According to the Financial Post, Canada lost the most jobs in 9 years, with biggest drop on record in part-time work. 88,000 jobs gone. Economists have expected gains of 10,000. So this happened this happened this year. And it seems pretty clear to me that, considering the implementation of the $15 minimum wage, how much things have gone up in price and how many businesses have been leaving Ontario, it seems pretty clear to me that this is the cause of all these jobs that are going. So we are in a position we haven't been in since 2009, and that would have been just after the stock market crash. This has all been done by Kathleen Wynne in about a fucking month. In 1 month, she brought us down to this level. So this is why I'm supporting Ford going in. Because he seems to me like he is a guy that's going to get the jobs back. He seems to me like he is a guy that's going to cut my taxes, put money back into our pocket, which is going to solve many of our issues. However, that being said, just the other day, there was another announcement, somebody else getting into the race. And this, once again, is not an establishment politician. This would be somebody coming from, I guess you could consider this another grassroots movement. Anyway, the candidate is Tanya Granick Allen, and she is a social conservative who already has a large base support. She's part of a group that is against Kathleen Wynne's current sex ed model. They want parents to be more involved. They want it to be rewritten. They see a lot of problems with it. They're also not happy with the progressive conservatives. They found that they've been forced out of the Progressive Conservative Party. As social conservatives, a lot of the things such as pro-life has been forced out of their. They just don't have a place for them anymore. So she's going to be coming into this, and she's already going to be pulling in lots of support with her. So it's going to be interesting with this Tanya Granick Allen, whether she's going to make an impact or not. Because if she's not going to get the same mainstream attention, then she's not really going to be known. Even if she pulls in a big base off the start, she's going to need more from the membership. So who's it going to be? Who is she going to pull in? She seems to pull in the social conservatives, but they're already going to her already. She's going to have more than just that. She's also going to have to find a way to market herself if she's not getting the marketing from the media, which maybe you could do in the debate, but still probably not enough. You're going to have to get your name out there now, especially if you're going up against a Mulrooney and a Ford. So while she's coming in and she seems to have a strong entrance, I actually think she's going to fizzle out for that reason. However, maybe she'll prove me wrong. And again, she's coming from another sort of grassroots movement at the moment, so who knows, maybe she'll gain more support than I think. So right now we have 2 debates scheduled for the election. I know at least one has already been set. It's February 15th. It's going at 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the agenda. And that is going to be, then it's going to be aired on some social media such as YouTube. I actually want to get in on that. So what I'm probably going to do is when I'm going to find some way to work it out. I want to do like a live stream of the debate as it's airing. I don't have cable, so we'll see if I can get access to the agenda in some way. I probably can. Maybe I'll wait for it to go on YouTube and then do a live stream of the debate as it happens. We'll see. I'll figure it out. I also have something kind of similar planned for when the actual election goes down again between Kathleen Wynne and whoever ends up winning the Conservative nomination. However, at the moment, one of the reasons I do believe that it's still going to be Ford is that online people are definitely putting his name out more, and these are not politicians. These are just common everyday people. These are the people that are really going to matter. These are probably, a lot of them especially could even be members, like have a membership to the Conservative Party. So these are the people that you want to get, the people that are actually going to be able to vote for you. It's very nice if a federal Conservative member is supporting you, but then again, I really don't know, especially in Canada, how much weight that really carries even these days. Even amongst the more conservative right-wing base, I still don't know if a politician endorsing you really carries that much. It's just these days when we're kind of already learning the game, when the people are kind of learning the game, we really don't trust the politicians that way. Anyway, at least I'm just speaking for myself, I guess, because I've always found that it's pretty meaningless if a politician ends up endorsing someone. Doesn't mean anything. I've also found a couple polls that people put out. I conducted a poll myself, and this was before this person Tanya Allen came into the race. However, every single one had Ford winning over everybody else. In fact, Mulrooney may even be less popular than I thought, if I'm remembering my polls correctly. Let me pull them up right here. So as we can see, at least online, Christine Elliott, all in all, was pulling in more support than Mulrooney was. So perhaps Caroline Mulrooney really won't go as far as I thought. Because the thing is, too, is she may get the recognition publicly, but then again, people who tend to buy memberships to a political party are a little more politically involved, a little more politically knowledgeable. So her name with them would maybe just have less meaning. But for people that would just... It may be good for the provincial election so that people who just poke their head out whenever election kind of comes around, they would recognize the name Mulrooney. And actually, Mulrooney would be bad to win the leadership and then to win the premiership, because people are even saying that she would work well with Justin Trudeau. Is that really what we want? Do we want somebody that can work well with Justin Trudeau? Because he's proven his agenda is pretty fucking bad. So should we really want somebody that wants to work with him, or somebody who wants to go against everything Trudeau stands for? Personally, I want the guy that's going against everything Trudeau stands for, and that seems to be Doug Ford right now. Now, as we were talking about, there was massive job loss over the month of January, and one of the biggest hit was part-time jobs. Now, the danger of this is part-time jobs usually lead into full-time jobs. So if these part-time jobs are going, then we're in a dangerous spot, because we're not really producing anything new. We're not producing any new work for the common people. And considering how people are already struggling and already getting taxed the fuck out of them, this is really the last thing we need. There seems to be, amongst the Liberals these days, and this has come in with Justin Trudeau, I would even say it wasn't quite around in Kathleen Wynne's government nearly as much until Trudeau really came in as leadership. But there's this vision of a utopia in the Liberal Party. They believe that... I don't know if it's actually a true belief or whether it's some means to an end, but they seem to have this belief in a utopia that they can usher in, that all the problems that they saw came out of Harper's government when he was in power, that they can suddenly reverse those, bring equality to all, and that everything in Canada will be perfect. Yet utopias are quite dangerous. So this is what the main thing that we should all be worried about when they're talking about utopias. It's not even that. It's a very nice sentiment, but not every single utopia has been turned into a dystopia. We have plenty of examples from books, movies, and plenty of other stories of this. And one I really like is the movie Demolition Man. Kind of glossing over the beginning. It has Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone. Stallone's a cop, Snipes is a terrorist, and they get cryogenically frozen, brought to the future. Snipes escapes, and he's causing havoc in this future where there's, world peace, there's total equality, everything's great among everybody. So nobody in this world has really been exposed to the sort of violence that Wesley Snipes' character brings into it. So they bring Stallone in to come capture him. Now, as we go through this world, what is supposed to be utopia, and it's another way in this movie, it is showing how this utopia really isn't as great as people think it is. As much as these people believe they're living in a great society, Stallone showing them through the old ways how they've really lost their humanity. And there's a few examples of this. And first one, probably the best one, would be the fact that in this future, people got fined for swearing. You would, because everything was automated in this time, everything had cameras. Kind of sounds a lot like communist China, actually. So if one of these units, these computer units, you were standing nearby, heard you swear, it would issue you a ticket that you had to pay off. If you got enough tickets, then they would actually alert the police to come arrest you just for swearing. So in this future, they have no freedom of speech.
Noun, portable firearm. This device was widely utilized in the urban wars of the late 20th century, referred to as a pistol.
Look, I don't need a history lesson. Come on, Hal. Where the goddamn guns?
You are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
What? Fuck you.
Your repeated violation of the verbal morality statute has caused me to notify the San Angeles Police Department. Please remain where you are for your reprimand.
Yeah, right.
Just cigarette, any cigarette.
Smoking is not good for you. It has been deemed that anything not good for you is bad, hence illegal. Alcohol, caffeine, contact sports, meat.
Are you shitting me?
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
What the hell is that?
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit.
Bad language, chocolate, gasoline, uneducational toys, and anything spicy. Abortion is also illegal, but then again, so is pregnancy if you don't have a license.
If you can't even swear, then you've really reached a really bad point. Now, it may seem on the surface like it's all good. Well, swear words, they can hurt people, so it's good. We've taken them out. Fuck that. But it's the ability to express your own opinion without being censored. It's the ability to speak up when things are bad, when something is, for instance, when you think you have a tyrannical leader. In a lot of ways, we see how our freedom of speech is being policed these days. For instance, right now, the Liberal Party is talking about revitalizing an old internet hate speech law. So, and also Justin Trudeau has been talking about, he thinks a lot of the mockery that's come from him from the people kind is fake news or something. Anyway, he's threatening stricter regulations on Facebook if they don't get a handle on it. Meanwhile, he either was ignorant or willingly glossing over the fact that it was the people, the international community, laughing at him. And we can see how even what happened after that was dangerous, because our freedom of speech again was starting to get threatened to be violated by our prime minister as he was threatening Facebook. But at the same time, his best buddy in the world, Gerald Butts, was also saying that this was coming from alt-right Nazi sympathizers. He was essentially calling people that were making fun of Trudeau for this people kind comment, he was calling them Nazis, essentially. These are our leaders. So how soon till criticism starts to get policed? Because I'm sure before we get down to swearing, criticisms are one of the first thing to go, and then you really can't have an honest conversation. So that's one example in this utopian society of how things are not really as good as they seem. Another one is the fact that nobody actually can touch each other. They don't want to touch each other. They don't. Everybody kind of stops, just like, for instance, you give a high five, you stop just before you touch the other person. So when Stallone comes in, he's used to it, giving high fives. Yeah, how you doing, buddy? But it's weird to everybody. They don't touch each other.
Here you go. Will do. Any new info, Rama, on Simon Phoenix?
There is nothing, Lenina Huxley. Where's your John Spartan?
Oh, he went to the bathroom. I guess he got all thought out.
Oh. Sir, I formally convey my presence.
How you doing?
We are not used to physical contact greetings.
Germs.
Look, I don't know if you guys know it, but you're out of toilet paper.
Now, how do you reach the point where you don't touch one another? Is it really that you've educated everybody down to the point where they just see that touching one another would be considered unacceptable? Probably not. You would do something like that. It's definitely a form of authoritarian control, but you would do something like that through fear, essentially. That would be the best way to get some people to stop touching one another. The other thing about that was what came with that is that people stopped actually having sex. Is that in this world you had some headset that you put on and then you had virtual sex, and the idea of actual sex was completely disgusting. And this doesn't seem to be a unique idea in utopias either, the idea that sex is disgusting and is actually uncivilized. Anybody who's read the book Brave New World, it's very similar story in this, is that in here, the social hierarchy, humans are no longer born, but they're created in vats, essentially. And because of this, people can manipulate them when they're growing, and they can manipulate them into the social hierarchy. So, just like the classic, there's the pyramid, where you have the small hierarchy at the top. I think they went by they were labeled in alphabetical order, so people at the top were considered the A class, and then you had the B class and the C class. And anyway, the A class were the smartest, most beautiful people. B's were a little less smarter, a little less beautiful. You go down the list, it continues. By the time you reach the bottom of the pyramid, bottom of the hierarchy, they were just smart enough to do the work. But that was about it. But it was a utopia. Everyone was happy. It gets their version of equal. Because I think a lot of ways people have a different idea of what equality is. So that was their idea of equality. But it was the same thing. There was no actual births, and there was like a human sanctuary where all of the people from this utopian society would go to see primitive humans in play. And in the book, when one of the main characters goes there, she sees a baby being born naturally from a woman. It was just so revolting and triggering for them. But then at the same time, in this, what I liked about Brave New World, it showed how crazy far the equality agenda can go. Because in this book, there was pretty much no marriages or anything like that, because it was meaningless. For the sake of equality, you had to date anybody who asked you out. So, date. You fucked them. So having an actual relationship was meaningless when anybody that came by and said, hey, I want to date you, you were obligated to say yes. Once again, taking out freedom of choice, freedom of speech. Funny, a lot of freedom seem to go in an equal world. So already we see a few examples of our utopia, which is really nothing of the sort. It has become the complete opposite. In fact, in a world where equality is everything, everybody becomes equally poor, equally miserable. Hell, fuck, look at Ontario right now for the $15 minimum wage. After that happened, we completely saw everything's gone. So now we're all living in poverty together. How soon until we're all living off the government together? Which, by the way, is also becoming the biggest employer in Canada. I know it's one of the biggest in Ontario right now, and actually in the Maritimes, I believe it is the biggest employer. So the public sector has taken over the private sector. This also seems to be something that comes with in these utopias, is that there's not much in private possessions. Everything is owned by the state. This is a common theme. A big state government. You cannot have this equality with living in like a libertarian society, because there's nobody to regulate that everybody's acting that way. You need a proper balance between freedom and equality. However, freedom has to trump equality. Because in a free society, you can have equality, at least some equality, but in equal society, you don't get either. That's why actually the more somebody pushes for equality, it gets a little more, you should be a little more suspicious of what their intentions are. And it might not even be a deliberate intentions on their side. But when they talk about equality, it's not that they care. It's not that they actually care that, oh, you know what, it's unfair that the poor are poor. It's that something in their life is unfair. They want to take it out, get their own revenge in some way. Whether that means that's because they didn't succeed in life, they didn't become as big as they wanted or as rich as they wanted, so therefore they want to take it from somebody else, just as an example. If we're talking right now, I guess for that example, I'd be talking more about the spreading the wealth than anything else. But the more equal a society becomes, the scarier it actually seems to get. One common theme amongst all these utopias is the act of surveillance. Is the fact that no matter where you go, this overarching state is able to know what you're saying, see what you're doing, and any dissidents, they're able to pick you up immediately. Now, you get to that point through fear, but there's two ways that can go, I guess. You can either reach that point, that's sort of utopia if you want, where you have absolute control over people. Sort of I guess in the scenario I'm talking about in Demolition Man, where everyone thinks that their scenario is great. But then this is sort of the idea of how do you convince a man he's free? How do you keep a man enslaved, convince him he's free, as the saying goes? So it can be this sort of effect. But then you can have the other way around, which is a complete pushback from the citizens. And then you can have more of a Dredd-like world. And I don't know how many people you've maybe seen the 2012 movie Dredd. Me, I've read the comic book series Dredd, which goes into much more detail about the universe that happens in there. But this one is not a utopian future, it's quite the opposite, it's a dystopian future. So what ends up happening in the story of Dredd is that after World War III, where there was an atomic war, humanity kind of came together in these mega cities, but it was a lot of crime, and there was a lot of civil disobedience, the police couldn't handle it. So anyway, it was decided that the judges got together of the judges of America that were left, and they decided they pretty much abolished the police. They became the police themselves, with the power of judge, jury, and executioner on the spot. So if they saw you commit a crime, they could literally do your trial and sentence you within 5 minutes. So they end up overtaking America, they overthrow the president, and then the Justice Department takes over. So now it is completely run by the judges. It is a complete dictatorship, and it is ruled through an iron fist. There is no democracy. Only the judges themselves get to choose who becomes the next, they call it Chief Justice, which is pretty much the president of the megacities. And again, these are megacities because they're supposed to expand, they're huge. They're supposed to expand, like, the main city where this story takes place is supposed to expand the entire East Coast, or pretty much most of it. At least of America. Canada was not included. So anyway, in this, Judge Dredd is like the main cop. He's the main character, of course, the best one they have. And the judges are just a small I guess they really are the royalty of their day, even though their job is to keep the city safe and it's super dangerous. They're the royalty because they're chosen from a really young age, they're trained throughout their entire lives, and then they have this authority for their entire lives. A huge shit ton of authority over their, over whoever it is. And it's to the point where there wouldn't be like a investigation if they ended up shooting somebody because it was such a violent city. So corruption in this Justice Department was rampant. Judge Dredd was supposed to be one of the really good judges, the ones who always respected the law. But this is the sort of alternate future you can see, which is a police state, essentially. You get into one of the two. You rule through fear, which you get the people in ignorance, and you make them believe that they are living in a free society or an equal perfect society, or they don't buy it, and then you find yourself ruling with an iron fist, a dictatorship. Now, why am I talking about this? Like, I've talked before about... like we mentioned at the beginning that, you know, this is sort of, I see this as Trudeau wins Utopia, but why is this so important? Well, honestly, it was kind of just when I was looking more into Trudeau and the Mulroney, how they were associated, when I was looking more into Caroline Mulroney. Brian Mulroney it's going back years when Trudeau was going out for the Liberal part, just the leadership of the Liberal Party. Just some of the things he was talking about, and it's true, it's that he says, like, he said that Justin Trudeau's not stupid, and anybody who underestimates them does so at their own peril. Justin Trudeau, to me, is a fucking idiot, and I'm sure just about every single person agrees. Yet, he's smarter than that. For instance, people kind. At first, yeah, I thought it's just him pushing his progressive stupid bullshit. But then, those words are ringing in my ear by Mulroney. He's smarter than that. You underestimate him at your own peril. Which makes me believe now that I've kind of said before, while I do see, like, sort of the way Canada's going, it does seem very dictatorship the way Trudeau is running things. I find him more dangerous than someone like Trump, however, many people try and spin it the other way around. But now I feel that it's not just a danger with Trudeau and what he's trying to do, his progressive agenda, but I feel there's actually a sinister side to it now. We also see how he wants to censor, he wants to censor speech, for instance, and now he's talking about how he wants to censor Facebook and the way that we communicate with each other because of criticism, blah, 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 blah. Well, on the surface, it may just seem very progressive. I'm offended, you know, you've hurt my feelings, you can't say that, blah, 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 blah. The point is what if the Trudeau is being smart by all this, and what he is in fact doing is hiding behind this veil of ignorance and stupidity, but is in fact actually ushering in the control that he actually wants. I don't think anybody will deny that Justin Trudeau wants control. He wants power. But I feel like now there's actually a genuine, sinister intention behind what he is doing. Like, now he is... Before, I would say he wasn't deliberately trying to tear down our freedoms because because it was sinister. I just thought he was doing it because he was fucking stupid and he didn't know what he was doing. He was incompetent. But a few times we've seen past the veil of Trudeau and to sort of see who he really is. So I feel this veil, this progressive image that he puts forward is actually just a means to an end. It's a way for him to solidify more power, which is actually making me nervous going into the 2019 election. He's tearing down our means of communication. He's censoring what we can and cannot say. He's done that both in the... he's done that both talking about online. He's talking about doing that in person. And the policies that he pushes, it's very divisive. I mean, propping up Islam in the ways that he does, he knows is going to cause friction between the two groups. For instance, just the other day, he said that he believes that Sharia law is compatible with Western democracy. There's no way he can be that fucking ignorant. However, by saying that, he is stoking the divisive flames. Some things that seem so innocent are actually, I just think, are preparations for the ability to do it again. It's essentially a normalization. And this is even in our political system. The passing of the O Canada gender neutral the bill that went through just within the last week or two. A lot of people were pissed off because debate was shut down on this bill. Now, it's just an O Canada bill. What's the big fucking deal? Like, yeah, you don't like it. Debate was shut down, but it's not that big of a deal. We're just changing some lyrics to a song. That's what we're doing this time. So something like that, for instance, I think is really him strategically normalizing us to infringing more and more on our rights without us really doing much about it. This whole, the sinister theory is just something I've just started working on. It's just something I've just started toying with, because I didn't think about it until maybe a day or two ago once I saw this quote by Brian Mulroney. What does concern me about everything, though, is the fact that Pierre Elliott Trudeau had a lot of sympathy for the communists, both China, Cuba, and Russia. He had sympathy for them all. In fact, a lot of times he sided with the Russians over America during the Cold War. So, and with Trudeau actually mentioning, I almost forgot about this, but with Trudeau mentioning how he has respect for Chinese basic dictatorship because it allows them to get stuff done. My belief is that behind these sinister intentions is that he's moving towards something more like that. He's moving towards more of a communist dictatorship. I think even just a few months ago, I wouldn't necessarily have gone that far. I just thought he had really far lefty policies, but I might be coming around to the idea that that's actually is what he wants. He truly wants to be a dictatorship. We still got 2 more years with the man, so it's possible that he can let more slip in that time, that we can figure out more of what he's trying to do, what he's really trying to do. I do believe that he has some greater hidden agenda. I think we've all believed that he has a hidden agenda, of course, but I believe it's much more sinister now than we originally thought. But we may not be able to tell until the coming election. See, in this previous election, a lot of foreign money went into it, manipulated the results. It was flooding into Canada. It was about 6 million used. That's another thing I'm going to make a video on soon. But this money was flooding into Canada. It didn't go to benefit the Conservatives, and it went out benefiting, it was the left wing, mainly Trudeau and his liberals. And then he comes into power. So if we're seeing large foreign donations being offered up yet again in order to keep Trudeau in power, and he does not lose, at the very least he doesn't go down to a minority government, then we're really going to know something's up. And he would definitely not want a minority government, because that would, the NDP don't like him, the Conservatives don't like him, and I think at the very least they'd be willing to unite to block him on a lot of what he wanted to do if he came up with a minority government. So if he managed to hold on to his majority government in the next election, then we really know something was going on. But I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion. I'll see you all soon.